What would you say is the Steve Bannon story since he left the White House?
Okay, that's a good way. Yeah, that's a good way in.
Because I wonder, one of the questions is where we start the clock.
Bringing Steve Bannon behind the walls of the headquarters of the opposition party, the New York Times. He's going to come in and sit down for an interview with me.
And why do you call the Times the opposition party?
That's what Steve has called it.
This is the question I get from Republicans. Are we going to break into two parties, right? I think somehow you have to get to that issue. It's like, is this going to end
up... Is that the goal, right?
Yeah, is that actually his goal?
Most Americans first heard the name Steve Bannon the morning that the news was announced that he had taken over the Trump campaign.
Stephen Bannon of conservative firebrand news site Breitbart, now campaign CEO.
You can't overemphasize how quickly Bannon went from being a completely anonymous figure to being central, not just in the White House, but to the American political system.
I remember it very clearly because the news happened overnight, and I immediately emailed Steve and I said, I never honestly thought I would see this day. This is not only the barbarians at the gate, they've crashed through the gate. Because that was really what Steve saw himself as, is this insurgent, this revolutionary who was seeking to take control of Washington's institutions of power.
If we could maybe break into what his main objective is, if everything that he's doing has a very specific motivation behind it, why is he talking to us?
He was widely seen as the man behind the curtain inside the Trump administration, and he was going to be responsible for tearing down the administrative state. Remember that first week in office.
The swift and dramatic remaking of policy by the new administration.
And then Trump stuns the nation with this travel ban, and it was so out of the blue. But behind the scenes, a lot of that was Steve Bannon. And then, after less than 8 months in the White House,
Steve Bannon is out tonight as President Trump's chief strategist.
Steve was pushed out.
Publisher came out to meet me.
Can they open the gate over here for us?
He returned to Breitbart and began building a shadow Republican Party. In a major blow to the president's party this week,
Democrats all but wiped out the Republican majority in the Virginia State House.
Republicans lost across the country, including a bellwether governor's race in Virginia. 1 year after his greatest political triumph, is Bannon's movement now faltering?
We celebrated today in the Trump movement as MAGA Day, right? A high holy day. And we'll celebrate it like Bastille Day going forward. But a year later, the governor of Virginia lost. Now, it's a blue state and everything like that, but I keep telling people, every day is going to be a struggle. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. But it's a process. It's a process. So the process now goes, why is Mitch McConnell? Because the Senate and Mitch McConnell have been the most outrageous in their lack of support of President Trump's agenda.
So that's his greatest offense, is not supporting the president enough.
The greatest offense is not supporting the president enough as of now. I think he showed his contempt for the grassroots movement. I think he showed his contempt for the Trump movement in those actions. And so, yes, Mitch McConnell has to go.
Do you think Mitch McConnell will be majority leader at this time next year?
I absolutely do not think he will be majority leader.
Is that your personal mission, to make that not happen?
It's not my personal mission, but it is an objective that I have an objective that Mitch McConnell would not be majority leader, and I believe will be done before this time next year.
So I know you watched that Jeff Flake speech, and I wonder what you thought when you listened to him denounce the president and say, our children are watching.
It is often said that children are watching. Well, they are. And what are we going to do about that? When the next generation asks us, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you speak up? What are we going to say? Mr. President, I rise today to say enough.
Give me a break. Flake was one of the guys that looked the other way and allowed this country to start to lose its sovereignty by unlimited illegal immigration, and particularly in the state of Arizona. And so when Jeff Flake gets high and mighty like that, and I see what Donald Trump has said and how he represents working class people and how he's trying to make their lives better, Jeff Flake is a total, incomplete phony, okay? Everything he says, everything he does. I have absolutely zero respect for him. There's too much talk and not enough action. That's why we have to change the system. We have to go in and get these trade deals to start to take care of the American worker, not just the American company, the American worker.
So there's no doubt, though, that message of President Trump's has appeal with white nationalists.
Absolutely
is
not.
that
That's
an unfortunate reality, an unintended consequence?
I think it's nonsense. I think it's nonsense.
You don't think he appeals to them at all?
I think these guys grab on to anything they can. No, the message is one of, this is the least racist guy I've ever met, and nothing in the campaign, and nothing that he's done to date. That's all left-wing. That's MSNBC nonsense. And by the way, these guys are marginalia to marginalia, right? So they'll grab onto anything, and by the way, every time they say Trump's name, MSNBC's got a camera on it, and the New York Times has an article on it, right? Because you're obsessed with it.
So you think it's a media fabrication?
Absolutely, 100%. It's 100% media fabrication. And by the way, because they realize that they think the only way they can run is by smearing you to be a nativist, a misogynist, a racist, a homophobe.
But they're chanting his name. They're saying Heil Trump.
You can't help it. They're doing that because they know the mainstream media. As soon as if they sit around and do whatever they do, nobody covers them. Right? Because nobody cares, because they don't have any meaning or purpose, okay? They're so tiny and irrelevant. As soon as they try to start bringing in the president, all of a sudden the cameras are there, CNN's there, the New York Times there's a front page story. They play the mainstream media to build it up, and it's irrelevant nonsense. It's just something that's going to have to be worked through. You see this in...
Well, this all bubbled over, as you know, in the most, I think, detrimental way for the president in Charlottesville. Did he handle that right?
I think the president handled it perfectly.
He also said that some of those folks were very fine people.
No. What he was trying to say, you guys are taking it out of context. There was two things that went on. There were peaceful protests of people that supported the monuments and people that thought the monuments should come down or be removed, okay? And then there's thugs that are there looking for a fight. And I have said from day one, when those neo-Nazis and neo-Confederates, when guys show up in helmets and with baseball bats, and Antifa shows up, Antifa being just as bad, when they show up, the cops should round those guys up, put them in the paddy wagon, and take them downtown. Because all they're there to do is cause chaos on both sides.
The Russia investigation, it sounded earlier like you said...
Oh, we're now going into fake news?
You don't think Mitch McConnell should be allowing these investigations to proceed? Do you agree with the president? Is the Russia thing just a hoax?
Look, I think the collusion thing is, and I've said from day one, is a joke. I was there. We couldn't collude. We had a tough time colluding between the Trump campaign in Pennsylvania and the RNC, right? I mean, all of our stuff is a ground game. So I think look, have some marginal guys, and there were definitely some marginal people early on in the campaign. There was an island of misfit toys, right? Had some really good people. You can't staff a government. You needed the establishment. The campaign early on had some marginal guys, and you've seen them on TV. These guys have popped up.
Manafort wasn't marginal, though.
He'll have his day in court but it should not be lost on you that my first executive decision was to talk with Jared and the president about Manafort had to go.
You fired him.
Yeah.
From your perspective, what did happen between Russia and the Trump campaign?
I have no idea, and it's not relevant. It's just irrelevant.
It's not relevant if crimes were committed by members of the campaign?
It's not relevant. A collusion did it change the outcome of the election? If anybody had contact, look, first off, I'm a former naval officer that was on a destroyer whose mission was hunting Russian submarines. I know the Russians are bad guys, okay? I don't need to be told that. They're bad guys, okay? And not to be trusted.
But Trump doesn't seem to think the Russians are bad guys. He's talking about Putin being his buddy.
In life, you have to deal with not good guys, right? And you still have to make arrangements and relationships and treaties with them. Look, I'm a law and order guy. If they did something wrong, they should be prosecuted for it. My point's different. The media narrative's being different. It's not about guys. That's what they got. They're saying the election was turned by the Russian involvement. It's BS.
But your time in the White House, look, I mean, you are somebody who articulates a very clear vision for where this country should be going and the policies we need to implement to get us there. If you could have, would you have stayed for all 4 years of president's
Oh, my God, no. Term? Not more than one. I never intended to leave. I knew that at the time that Reince going...
You mean you never intended to stay?
Never intended to stay.
Why are you able to be more effective on the outside?
Because I got my hands on my weapons. I mean, come on. I'm much more effective. I can meet with all the grassroots groups, and I can do everything I want. Remember, I've dedicated my life to build this populist nationalist movement, and it's just, for me, it's so much better. I mean, look, you're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days, right? You're gonna have Virginias, and you're gonna have November 8th of 2016, and you're gonna have Virginias. You're gonna have gray skies, you're gonna have blue skies. But I absolutely am convinced that we're on the right track.
Let's do a tail side here, quick. Just a clap or something.
All right, this is take 7. Marking.